Oftentimes when we work with data and data sets, we really have to think about data management. And what the data management involves is, first of all, cleaning our data to make sure that our data is as accurate as possible, at least to our knowledge. But also sometimes we have to manipulate the data. Either we have to take a subset of the original data set that we have based on some condition, or we have to manipulate the variables that we have and put them in a form that it's usable for whatever analysis that we're going to do. And there are a number of different things that we can do with data, but let's look at some of the capabilities that SPSS gives us when it comes to data management. The first one that we're going to talk about is how to check for errors, and these are one of the basic things that we can do. If you come across a data set that you start working with, and especially if this is not your data set, or if somebody helped you put in the data, anything like that, it's always a good idea to look at the values of each variable to make sure that these make sense. So in this data set, I have a couple of different variables. I have a student ID, I have student grade, and I know that this data set contains data from 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. I have recorded 5 different activities, and we know that either they participated or not. 1 stands for participation, 0 stands for not participation. And also I've recorded their BMI index. This is all made up data, so I just generated it at random, just for this example. So if I have a data set like that, my first order of business would be to run just the simple frequencies to see if all the data that I have makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run all of the variables that are numeric. Even if we have a categorical variable, we can do that. And in fact, our activity variables are really categorical, right? Participation versus non-participation. The 1s and 0s don't really mean anything. They don't really have value. So I would grab my student grade level, the activity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the BMI. And I'm just going to run simple frequencies. If you have multiple variables that you want to grab and put it under the variables field, you can select them one by one and move them. Or if you select one and hold down your control button, you can select multiple variables that you want to move. All I want is to look at the frequency table and see if there's something odd is going on. So I'm going to click OK, and here's our output. Let's see. Under student grade, I have 7th, 8th, 9th graders. Oops, I have 2 12th graders. These should not be in my data set. So I automatically am going to go and I'm going to sort my student grade by descending. So here are my 2 12th graders. I know this is data entry error. I'm not quite sure what grade they need to be, but I know there cannot be 12th graders. So I'm going to go ahead and delete my 12th grade values in here. Let's go back to the frequency and see what's going on else. So we've done with the grade level. Let's look at the activity. We have 0s and 1s. I know this is good, but I have a 2 in there, which seems to be either a typo or data entry error. So this 2 doesn't really hold any value to me. And I'm not sure if it should be a 1. I'm not sure if it should be a 0. So we have to delete this one. And then activity 2 looks good. Activity 3, we have another 2 that we need to eliminate. 4 and 5 look okay. Let's look at the BMI. We have a range between 17 and 36. That looks good to me. Alright, so let's go back. We need to eliminate the 2s in activity 1 and 3. So we go back to our data set. Here's my activity 1. Again, I want to sort. You know, this is not accurate, and then activity 3, I have to sort descending, this is not accurate, and I delete it. So this is the first step that we want to do. Now let's say that we want to look at the individual groups based on grade level. So I have about 300 and some participants altogether in my data set, and they're all mixed up between 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. But I want to see, or maybe I want to run any types of descriptive statistics on them. I want to do it by group. I want to do it by grade level. So what are my options? We can select individual grade level, so we can select those who are in grade level 7, grade level 8, or 9, and run those independently. We can do that. Or we can actually tell SPSS to split the file. And what it does, splitting the file, is SPSS takes that variable and splits the file based on all possible values in that one variable. So in our case, we have value of 7, 8, and 9. So SPSS is going to split that file 3 ways. It's going to lump all the 7th graders, it's going to lump all the 8th graders, and then all the 9th graders. So any variable that has 2 or more levels, we can use as a split file variable. If we have 2 levels, the file is going to be split based on those 2 levels, so we're going to end up with 2 groups. We can have 3, 4, 5, and so on. Alright, so here we can split the file. We can tell SPSS which variable we wanted to use for that split. And really what we have are 2 options. We can either compare groups or organize output by groups. And what this does, there's not any difference in terms of how SPSS deals with the data. The only difference is how our output is going to look. So if we do compare groups, all of our data is going to be lumped in one table that is going to be split into the different rows are going to be the different groups. If we tell SPSS organize the output by groups, in this case we're going to have individual tables for each of our subgroups. So we're going to have one table for 7th graders, one table for 8th graders, and one table for 9th graders. I'm going to go ahead and select grade level, and I'm going to say compare groups, and I want to make sure that I move my variable to the right hand side, and then I'll click OK. Now SPSS gives you a little message here that says that the file is indeed split, but also if you look here in the bottom right corner, you'll see a little message that says split by student grade. So every time if you're not sure whether the file is split or not, you can look down here and see whether that split is indicated. Now please note that even if you save your file and you exit out of SPSS, you go back into your file, that split is not going to be there anymore. We're going to have to resplit our file if we still want to work with individual groups. So let's see what our output looks like. Let's say we have split our groups and we want to see how many participated in activity 1 for each of the group. So we're going to run a frequency for activity 1, and here it is. So we have one set of the table that is for 7th graders, one set for 8th graders, one set for 9th graders. And we do have a value for those that are missing. Just FYI, even though in our case we don't really know what's going on, so we can ignore that information. But we can see that in 7th graders we have a total of 123 students. 62 did not participate in activity 1, 61 did participate. For 8th graders, we had 73 non-participants, 68 participants, and for the 9th graders, we had 71 non-participants and 56 participants. So this is how we can split our file and have SPSS actually do analysis and other types of either descriptive statistics or whatever we wanted to do based on the grouping. Another way that we can split the file or tell SPSS to select only certain cases in our data set is if we go back to our data and tell it select cases, and we can define what is the condition for that selection. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the split file and then say, okay, I don't want it to be split anymore. I want to analyze all of the cases. Do not create groups. I click OK. If we go back to our data, we can see that our split message down here is gone. So now we're working with all the cases as one group again. Let's see how select cases work. So let's say that I want to select cases. I want to select all of those participants who participated in activity 1. I can go back to data and I can tell SPSS select cases, and then I create a condition that I want it to be satisfied in order for those cases to make it into the group. So let's define our condition. We said that we wanted to select folks who have participated in activity 1. So we can grab that activity and we can say if variable activity 1 equals 1, because the ones indicate our participants, then we want to include those cases, right? And if we click OK, what we can see is, if we go back to our data file, is we have some cases, and here we can look on the left hand side, that don't have a line through. So these are our selected cases, and here we have some cases that have a line through, and these are not selected cases, the cases that are thrown out of our group. SPSS also creates a handy dandy extra variable that if we want to keep that filter, we can actually use it later on. And really a good idea is to go back and change the name of the filter. So let's say we can call it filter activity 1. And SPSS already has put what that filter is. Really, it is the activity 1 variable equals to 1. And we can see that zeros are not selected and ones are the selected ones. But now whatever we're trying to calculate, it's going to base it only on those who were included in our group, all of those who are participants in activity 1. And let's say we're going to run some descriptive stats on their BMI, for example, right? You can see here it is. We're working only with a subset of our original folks. We have 187. We originally had, let's see, we had 398 cases. We're working only with 197, and we can see the minimum BMI and the maximum, the average, and standard deviation. Now we can create more sophisticated filters. For example, I want to select cases that, or students who participated in activity 1 or participated in activity 2, right? So either activity 1 equals 1 or activity 2 equals 1. And we can tell SPSS to do that. Go back to our data set. Now we can see that we have selected ones that were not selected before. So for example, this student here, like a couple of 4 or 5 students, they did not participate in activity 1, but they did participate in activity 2, so that now they're included in our group. If we run our means descriptive statistic, we're going to see that we have a few more folks in our overall